find an unbiased site than I do reading the news I find. So many students exert effort to find reliable, high-quality news about topics that have piqued their interest. Persistence is their watchword. Now, this is a very long quote, and I'm sorry this goes against everything you're supposed to do as a presenter. But many of you are probably familiar with this, and it is one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And I just want to say that information skills have a really critical importance beyond the imposed tasks of research simulations, and also beyond the need to complete school research assignments. Media and information literacy skills have critical global importance, and that's what we've been hearing a lot in this session and also at this Congress. So I want to just say that national and international standards and frameworks, including the ACRL framework, AASL, IFLA, and UNESCO, clearly reinforce the importance of addressing information, media and digital literacy knowledge, practices, and disposition, not just with students, but with all individuals. Now, to get to our project, the acronym is RISIC. It's Researching Students' Information Choices. And it seeks to answer these two broad questions that we have on the slides. The primary research objective is to examine how students determine the helpfulness, credibility, and citability of online search results, particularly with regards to the role played by container or research type. We used an innovative methodology, and we were overzealous. So we studied 175 students, and they represent 5 educational stages. And the students participated in simulations, and they wanted them to study their real-time selection of resources involving the impact of the Burmese python in the Florida Everglades. So who are our participants? Well, you'll see, of the 175, 90 were in higher education. So we looked at students in Florida from grades 4 in the US, which is about the age of 9, through graduate students. 90 of them were higher education, 85 of them were from in the K through 12, so the primary and high school, middle school. You can see that 53% are female, 46 male, and 1% another gender. 85% were born in the US, and 36% were first-generation college students. We asked a lot of other demographic questions, which we will be using in our analyses probably for many years, looking at if English is their first language, the education levels of their parents and guardians, and to see if there are any effects on the way that they determine credibility and citability of resources. Again, some more demographics. The majority are white, followed by Asian, Latin, Hispanic, and Black. Now, we use the visitors and residents framework, which was developed by a group of us at OCLC, Oxford University, and the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And we came up with educational stages because we wanted, it was in sort of this, of us not really buying into Prensky's digital natives and digital immigrants, because he was basing that a lot on age. And there are many other factors that affect how individuals engage with technology and how they get their information. And so we're not looking at age, but looking at the phases or stages that individuals go through and transition through in their educational lives. So we have we had 4 with the original digital visitors and residents educational stages. And so we had an emerging stage, which is the last year of high school, secondary school, vocational technical school, and first year undergraduate, college, university students. Then we have the establishing, which are the upper division undergraduate, college, university students, the embedding with the graduate, postgraduate students, and the experiencing of the faculty, scholars, lifelong learners. For this project, we also had the elementary, middle school students, as well as the students in their first years of high school. So we had to develop these 2 new stages, the pre-emerging 1 and the pre-emerging 2. We have no experiencing in this study. So these are our numbers. The majority are that pre-emerging, so that those elementary school years. And then the emerging, which are the last year of high school, secondary school, and that first year of undergraduate vocational school. I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about our methods.
Okay, so as Lynn mentioned, we did do a simulation for this project. So we constructed the simulation, and I'm going to walk you through a little short video of that. So students were presented with a short video to introduce them to the topic, a research prompt, and a Google search box. Students were asked to think aloud during all of the following tasks. The first task was where they were asked to select resources that they found helpful to the prompt. They could navigate the results just as they would in Google. And then select ones that were helpful. In the second task, they were asked about the citability of the resources that they found helpful. In the third task, they were asked about the resources they did not select as helpful. In the fourth task, they were asked to judge the credibility of the resource based on a 5-point scale. These are, again, the helpful resources that they selected. And in the last task, they were asked to select the best container for each resource from 8 choices. So unlike the other tasks, which relied on the students' helpful judgments, this task used a set list of resources. Okay, so for this paper, we focused on 4 of the tasks. So the helpful task, the cite task, the credible task, and the container task. We also decided to focus on 3 resources which were presented to all 175 participants within their simulated Google search results. So they all had the opportunity to view these 3 resources and potentially select them as helpful. So the first one was a blog post from Captain Mitch's airboat tours up at the top there. The second was a website article from Wikipedia. And the third was an ebook from Google Books. So here's what we found. So in the helpful task, participants at the higher VNR levels were more likely to select Wikipedia, as you can see from the green line here. There was a similar trend for Google Books, but the relationship was a bit less clear, so you can see there's a bit of an inverted U there. And for Captain Mitch, participants at the higher VNR stages were less likely to select the resource as helpful, as indicated by the red line. In the cite task, the higher VNR stages were more likely to deem the Google book citable, but less likely to make the same judgment about those other 2 resources. This is especially interesting with Wikipedia because, as you can see in the previous slide, participants were more likely to select that as helpful, but their number goes down significantly in the citable task. This suggests that participants at the higher educational levels have a nuanced view of Wikipedia, right? Viewing it as helpful, but not necessarily citable. For the credibility task, Among those that thought that Captain Mitch was helpful, a helpful resource, the credibility score declined by the VNR stage. And as a reminder, the credibility was 5 equaled highly credible and 1 equaled not credible. For the Google Book resource, on the other hand, there was an overall increase in the credibility score by VNR stage. And for the Wikipedia resource, the trend is a bit less clear, as you can see by the psychedelic chart here, with significant variation in credibility score within every VNR stage. So when it came to correctly identifying the container for a resource, participants at higher VNR stages were better able to correctly identify the Wikipedia resource as a website and the Google Books resource as a book, as you can see from the top 2 lines there. There does not appear to be a relationship between VNR stage and correctly identifying the Captain Mitch resource, because many of our participants struggled to identify that resource as a blog. So the 3 resources analyzed here can be viewed to have 3 different levels of authority. Using our collective qualitative data to examine students' reasoning at different educational stages reveals a range of thinking about credibility, from those gut-level heuristics to the type of knowledge, practices, and dispositions that are advocated for by the ACRL framework, for example. Captain Mitch, does sponsored text have value? So the primary purpose of the Captain Mitch resource is commercial. It's promoting airboat tours. While several of the participants in the pre-emerging education stages incorrectly viewed Captain Mitch as a news article rather than a blog, others were able to discern the true purpose of the resource. One emerging student thought more deeply about Captain Mitch while judging its credibility, considering the value of professional experience in informal sources, and says, quote, "Well, looking without clicking this article, I would say a 2, just because it's CaptainMitch.com and that's super weird. Airboat tours? I don't know. Since he does airboat tours, he probably knows more. So I'll give that a 3, just because I know that my biological father did a lot of riverboat tours and stuff, and he knew a lot of stuff about doing that, which is why I figured Captain Mitch would know more." So this reflection sort of echoes that knowledge, practice, and disposition in the ACRL framework of authority is constructed and contextual, defining different types of authority and recognizing that the authoritative content may be packaged formally or informally. Wikipedia, helpfulness versus citability. Stop the shaming. The Wikipedia website article on Burmese pythons is perhaps the more ambiguous in its fundamental authority, right? It's the crowdsourced authorship of Wikipedia articles provokes debate relating to the credibility of the resource, despite the fact that many Wikipedia articles are authored by experts in the area of that topic. Some librarians often help to bolster the Wikipedia articles by editing and adding references. So while many students judge the helpfulness and citability of a resource at the individual resource level, it appears that credibility judgments are sometimes being made at that source level. So this may explain the high rate of Wikipedia's resource helpfulness, but then a drop in its citability and credibility. At the advanced VNR stages, the adult participants echo behaviors described in some previous studies in the literature. But at the emerging stage in particular, several participants described what might be coined as Wikipedia shaming. This is also sort of a prevalent comment that came from the VNR participants, which it was referred to as the learning black market, since they were using Wikipedia for academic work, but they weren't citing the resource. Among the typical responses describing Wikipedia shaming was this one. Quote, "I wouldn't use Wikipedia just because it's not scholarly. Now, me personally, I would use it if I was talking to a friend of mine. I would tell them to check out this page just because of the references. And personally, I think that Wikipedia kind of gets down a little bit, but I know that most colleges don't, and I don't think my teacher would enjoy that, so I would not use Wikipedia in my report. Also, on a whole, the pre-emerging participants in our study demonstrated, and those are our youngest, demonstrated an aversion to all uses of Wikipedia because teachers and parents clearly warned them to avoid using it. Additionally, while participants could identify Wikipedia as a pervasive presence in the information landscape, not all were able to identify its format. Is it a blog if it's open to contributions? A traditional encyclopedia that could be labeled a book? 81% of students labeled Wikipedia as a website. The next most popular container, at 8%, was blog, which was chosen more by our younger students in the study. Google Books, the problem with books. At the higher authority level is the book discovered in Google Books. This book in particular is written by expert herpetologists. It's published by a reputable university press in the United States. The majority of students identified this resource as a book when it came to credibility, but students rarely got to the level of determining authority, perceiving that the book format was too long, too old, or inaccessible, as illustrated in a couple of comments here. So I quote, "This is a book to buy, not a resource I can use right now." End quote. Quote, "Oh, but here's that Dorcas guy again. But again, the books. If I were looking for something specific, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's in this book. And then I'll go and actually do exactly this. I'll open it up in Google Books or whatever, and hopefully the free preview lets me see the one page where I just need the citation. And then I'll go and find the paper somewhere else, just because a lot of times, and especially with books, a lot of times they're older. So I'd much rather just have the journal article where they're getting their information from." All right, I'm going to pass it back to Lynn to conclude.
Okay, so that big question, so what? We did this, now what? The observations that we have so far from this paper, and we'll be reporting many other findings, really reflect a variety of needs that can inform the design of scalable instructional models to support this critical student inquiry, as well as updated professional development strategies for teachers and librarians. The observations support evidence-based decision-making for the implementation of more nuanced, iterative, and sophisticated information literacy instruction grounded in frameworks, guidelines, and standards. The gaps. There are a variety, at the variety of educational stages that we talked about, student participants revealed serious gaps in knowledge, practices, and dispositions. These include the agility to move beyond that aboutness and assessing the value of results. Also, understanding of the contextual nature of authority. The ability to identify potential and varied uses of information at different stages in the inquiry process. And consideration of scholarship as a conversation through such methods as reviewing references at the end of Wikipedia articles and considering the value of citation chaining and academic work. I think that more importantly, instructional models need to be designed based on individuals' cognitive abilities and subject knowledge of the discipline being investigated. And this was also demonstrated by the BNR studies that we had done previously, and this framework that we used here. Participants in the higher educational stages were more likely to identify the container for the Wikipedia and Google Books resources. Participants at higher B&R stages also were more likely to select the Wikipedia and Google Books resources as helpful and less likely to select the Captain Mitch resource as helpful. Those students earlier in their educational stages viewed Wikipedia as a resource that parents and teachers instructed them to avoid, while those in the later educational stages find Wikipedia articles as valuable and trusted resources, but indicate that they would not cite them for their academic work. This came up when we were writing our 6th edition of Research Methods book. We used one Wikipedia citation, and my co-author was terrified to do that. And I said, I bet nobody even notices, but we did. Now you'll all go look for it. So this window into students' behavior presents an opportunity for librarians and teachers to scaffold information literacy based on the students' needs at specific times of their educational stages, and to build on these literacies as they progress through their educational stages. And I want to thank you for inviting us today, allowing us to present this research. And again, this project was made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Thank you again.